The plate hit the wall so hard the sound cracked through the kitchen like a gunshot. Pieces slid across the floor and stopped near the maid's boots. One sharp edge touched the hem of her dress. She did not move. Her hands stayed wrapped around a wet rag, knuckles pale, eyes lowered. The widow stood by the table, chest rising fast, face red with anger that looked older than the moment itself. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing was even out of place. But that had never mattered much inside this house. "You think I don't notice things?" the widow asked. The maid kept staring at the floor. "I touched nothing. You breathed near my things, and I feel lighter already. I cleaned what you asked." "That your answer?" "It's the only one I got." The widow stepped closer. Her boots clicked against old wood. Rings flashed on her fingers as she pointed toward the broken plate. "You break what ain't yours, then stand there like a saint." "You threw it." The room went still. For a second, even the widow seemed surprised those words had been spoken aloud. "What did you say?" The maid lifted her eyes. "Just once. I said you threw it." The widow's mouth tightened. "Careful." The maid lowered her gaze again. "Yes, ma'am." Silence settled heavy between them. Somewhere deeper in the house, a clock ticked with slow patience. The widow turned away first, annoyed by the loss of control more than the answer itself. She opened a drawer, dug through it, and tossed 3 coins across the table. They spun and settled near a bowl of bruised apples. "There. For the week." The maid stared at the coins. "That all?" "That all you earned." She walked forward, slow and quiet, and picked them up one by one. Metal felt cold against her skin. The widow watched her like she expected another fight. Instead, the maid tucked the coins into her apron. "You done glaring?" the widow asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Then clean that mess." The maid crouched and began gathering porcelain pieces into her palm. One shard sliced her finger. A thin line of blood surfaced. She wiped it on her skirt and kept working. No one in the room cared. By the time the floor was cleared, the light outside had dimmed. The widow was already gone, leaving behind perfume, cold food, and the weight of another day. The maid carried her bucket out through the back door. The evening air hit her face like water. She stood still for a moment, letting the quiet settle around her. Her shoulders ached. Her knees hurt. Her stomach was hollow enough to feel angry. She began the walk home. Dust clung to the edge of her shoes. The road was mostly empty now. A wagon rolled past without slowing. A boy on horseback stared at her and kept going. She knew every house on this road. Knew which porches hid drunk men. Which windows hid women who watched but never waved. Which doors opened only when labor was needed. She passed the general store, already shuttered. Past the church with its crooked bell. Past the sheriff's office, lanterns still lit inside. Her steps slowed. A man laughed somewhere near the jail. Another voice answered. Then silence again. She kept walking. Her house was still another mile away. A narrow place barely standing, with a roof that leaked and walls thin enough to hear wind argue through them. But before the road curved toward her side of town, she saw it. A cabin sitting alone behind a split fence. One lantern burning on the porch. Not bright. Just enough to say someone was still awake. She had passed it before. Never stopped. Tonight, something about the light held her. Maybe because it looked warm. Maybe because nothing else did. She adjusted the bucket in her hand and started forward again, eyes fixed on the dirt road. Then a voice came from the porch. Low. Rough. Calm. You missed a spot on your sleeve. She stopped like the night itself had caught her wrist. She turned toward the porch but could barely make out the shape of the man sitting there. Hat low. Hands resting on his knees. Still as fence wood. The maid glanced at her sleeve and saw the dried streak of blood from her cut finger smeared across the fabric. For some reason, that made her want to laugh. Not from humor. From tiredness so deep it almost felt like madness. But no sound came. Only her breath, thin in the cooling dark. The lantern flickered once, like the house itself had just taken notice finally. The man did not move from the porch. The maid tightened her grip on the bucket. "You watching me now?" "Hard not to," he said. "You walk like your bones are losing an argument." She stared at him through the dark. The lantern beside him gave just enough light to shape a face worn down by years of silence. Not old exactly. Just tired in a permanent way. "You always talk to strangers at night?" she asked. "Only the ones bleeding." She glanced again at her sleeve. "It's nothing." "Didn't say it wasn't." A quiet settled between them. She should have kept walking. Every lesson she had ever learned told her that. Men with empty houses and soft voices were often worse than loud ones. But her feet stayed planted. He leaned back slightly in the chair. Wood creaked beneath him. "You work for the widow up the hill." She frowned. "You know her?" "Everybody knows her." "That sounds like pity." "It is." The maid shifted the bucket from one hand to the other. "What do you want?" she asked. He nodded toward the front door. "Cabin's dirty." She almost smiled. "Almost." "That your grand offer?" "You clean?" "Yes." "I pay." "How much?" "More than 3 coins." Her face hardened. "You spying now too?" He looked at her for a long moment. "You can hear shouting from the road." That shut her up. He stood, slow and deliberate, and stepped into fuller light. Tall. Broad shoulders. Shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows. A scar ran from his wrist halfway under his cuff. Not rich. Not polished. Just solid. He opened the door. Warm light spilled out. "Well?" he asked. She stayed where she was. "What's the catch?" He blinked once, like the question bored him. "You clean." "I pay." "That's all?" "That's already 2 more words than I like using." She narrowed her eyes. "Men like you always got a second sentence." "Not tonight." The maid looked past him into the cabin. A table. A stove. A chair missing one leg leaned against the wall. Nothing fancy. Nothing polished. Dust sat thick on nearly every surface. A house forgotten by the man still living in it. She stepped onto the porch. He moved aside to let her pass. Inside smelled like wood smoke, leather, and something faintly old. Not rotten. Just preserved. Like time had stopped here and no one had told the furniture. She set down her bucket. "Supplies?" she asked. "Under the sink." She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. He sat at the table while she moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency. Wiping counters. Sweeping corners. Shaking out rugs by the door. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence felt less hostile than most she knew. She passed a shelf lined with books no one had touched in years. Ran a cloth across them. Dust floated into lantern light. At the far end of the hall sat a door unlike the others. Closed. Locked. No dust around the handle. She paused. His voice came from behind her. "Not that room." She turned. He hadn't raised his voice, but something in it was harder now. She nodded once. "Didn't ask." "Good." She resumed cleaning. But now the locked door sat in her thoughts like a nail under skin. When she finished, the cabin looked less abandoned. Not cheerful. Just less defeated. She wrung out the rag into the bucket. Done. He stood and walked to the counter. Opened a tin. counted coins into his palm. 5. Then another. Then another. He held them out. Her eyes flicked down. That's too much. You did the whole place. It wasn't worth that. He shrugged. Not my concern. She slowly took the coins. The weight of them startled her more than kindness ever could. Why? She asked. He frowned. Why what? Why pay fair? That seemed to genuinely confuse him. Because work got done. She stared at him like he'd spoken another language. He turned toward the stove. There's stew. I should go. It's dark. I've walked darker. He ladled stew into a bowl anyway. Sit. She stayed standing. He placed the bowl on the table. Or don't. Food don't offend easy. That finally pulled the smallest crack at the corner of her mouth. She sat. The stew was hot enough to hurt. She welcomed it. He poured coffee into a chipped mug and pushed it toward her. She ate fast at first, then slower once her body remembered hunger could be patient. He leaned against the counter, arms folded. You got a name? He asked. She swallowed. You ask all your help that? Only the ones who look ready to stab me. She set down the spoon. You first. He considered it. No. She gave a dry laugh. Fair. Rain tapped suddenly against the window. Then harder. A storm moving in fast. She glanced toward the door. He noticed. That road'll be mud in 10 minutes. I've walked mud. Not this kind. Thunder rolled low and mean. The cabin windows rattled. She looked at the dark outside, then back at the warm room, like her own instincts were split down the middle. He grabbed another lantern and lit it. There's a spare room. Her shoulders stiffened immediately. No. He looked almost irritated by the assumption. Door locks from inside. That gave her pause. He pointed down the hall. Second room. Clean sheets. You expect me to trust that? No, he said. Storm doesn't care either way. Rain now slammed the roof. She stood frozen, wrestling with pride, caution, and plain exhaustion. Finally she picked up her bucket and set it by the wall. One night, she said. That's usually how nights work. She shot him a look sharp enough to cut bark. He almost smiled. Almost. She walked down the hall, stopping briefly at the locked door again. Just a glance. Nothing more. Then she entered the spare room and shut herself inside. A lock clicked. She leaned back against the door, listening. Outside, thunder cracked open the night. And somewhere else in the house, floorboards groaned once. Slow. Heavy. Not near her. But close enough. The lock on the door clicked again, louder this time in her mind than in the room. The maid stood in the spare bedroom of the cabin, listening to the storm slam itself against the roof like it wanted entry. Wind pressed at the walls. Rain hit the glass in uneven bursts, fast, angry, alive. She didn't sit down. She kept her boots on. The bed looked too clean for a man like him. That bothered her more than dirt ever could. Outside the room, floorboards creaked once. Then silence. She reached under the pillow anyway and found nothing but cotton. Still, her hand stayed there a second longer than necessary. A habit. Not trust. Another creak. Closer. She whispered without meaning to. You said door locks from inside. No answer. She stepped to the door and pressed her ear against it. Nothing at first. Then footsteps. Slow. Not heavy like the cowboy. Different rhythm. Careful. Controlled. She backed away. Her hand slid into her apron pocket where the small kitchen knife sometimes lived when she worked late shifts at the widow's house. It wasn't there now. She remembered leaving it by the sink. Of course, she muttered under her breath. A soft knock hit the wall outside her room. Not the door. The wall. She froze. Another knock. Then a scrape. Like something dragging along wood. She spoke louder now. Hey. No answer. The storm swallowed half her voice. She moved to the corner of the room where the window was, peering through the glass. Rain blurred everything outside. Porch lantern flickered in the distance like it was struggling to stay awake. Another knock. This time on her door. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats again. She stepped back. Cowboy, she called out. Still nothing. The handle turned slightly. Just a test. Not a full push. Her breath caught. She moved fast, grabbed the chair in the room, and slid it under the doorknob. It wasn't much, but it was something to resist a hand. The handle stopped moving. Silence again. Then a voice, low, unfamiliar, coming from the other side of the door. Don't scream. Her whole body locked. She didn't answer. The voice continued. He's not awake yet. She whispered back. Who are you? A pause. Then. Someone keeping you alive. That made her anger come before fear. I don't need that. A short laugh outside. No humor in it. You're in his house during a storm. That's neat whether you like it or not. She tightened her jaw. What do you want? Footsteps shifted away from the door. Moving down the hall. She followed the sound, staying inside the room but pressing closer to the wall. The voice again, quieter now. You saw the locked room? Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Yes. Don't open it. Too late for advice. A pause. Then the voice sharpened. Then you're already in it deeper than you think. The maid's hand pressed flat against the door. You breaking into houses now? I never broke in. Feels like it. The storm cracked hard outside, shaking the window frame. The lantern on the porch flickered wildly, throwing broken light through the hallway gap. The voice lowered again. You know what he is? He's a man who pays me. That's not what I asked. She didn't answer. Footsteps stopped near the hallway end. Right outside the locked room. Her stomach tightened. You better leave, she said. No. Last warning. A small sound now, metal touching metal. A key. The maid stepped back instantly. No, she said sharper. Don't you touch that door. The voice stayed calm. You don't even know what's in there. I know it's locked. That's not knowledge. The key slid into the lock. She moved before thinking, yanked the chair away from her door, and pulled it open. Rain air rushed in from cracks in the house. Cold hit her face. She stepped into the hallway. Empty. No one there. Just the sound of the lock turning slowly at the far end. Click. Her voice came out louder now. Hey. No answer. She ran down the hall. Bare feet against worn wood. Fast, sharp steps. She reached the locked door just as it opened a fraction. She slammed her hand against it. Stop. The door didn't move further. On the other side, silence. Then the cowboy's voice, suddenly awake, rough, immediate. What the hell is going on? He was behind her now. She turned. He stood at the end of the hall, shirt half on, hair damp from sleep, eyes sharp like he already knew something had gone wrong. She pointed at the door. Someone was here. His expression changed instantly. No confusion now. Just recognition. Did you see him? Yes. His jaw tightened. Describe him. Didn't get a face. That's bad. She stepped closer. You knew about this? No. That answer came too fast. Too practiced. She didn't like it. Don't lie to me, she said. I'm not. A beat. Then another. He moved past her toward the door, hand hovering near the handle but not touching it. The storm hit the house again, harder. The door shook slightly. Inside it, something shifted. A presence not seen but felt. The maid whispered. What's in there? He didn't answer right away. That silence was worse than any words. Finally. Something I failed. She stared at him. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. She stepped in front of him. Someone just tried to open it. He looked at her now. Really looked. And for the first time since she met him, he didn't look like a man in control of his own house. He looked like someone waiting for consequences he had postponed too long. Another knock hit the house. Not the door. The walls again. From somewhere deeper inside. The maid's voice dropped. There's more than one. He nodded once. Yeah. That was not your answer either. He exhaled slowly. No. The storm outside surged, shaking the cabin like it was being tested. The lantern light flickered across both their faces. He finally said it. You stay in your room next time I tell you. She didn't move. Or what? He didn't answer. Because from the locked door behind them, something started turning the handle from the inside. The handle on the locked door stopped moving the moment the cowboy spoke. But the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. The maid stood in the hallway, eyes fixed on the wood grain of that door like it might blink back at her. Her pulse had not slowed since the footsteps disappeared, and now it was worse because nothing was happening. The cowboy stayed close behind her, half-dressed, breath still uneven from waking too fast. You didn't imagine it, she said. No, he replied. That was all. A long pause stretched between them. Then, a knock hit the front door of the cabin. Hard. Once. Then again. The cowboy didn't move immediately. The maid turned her head slightly. More of them? He shook his head once. That's not them. Another knock. Stronger this time. A voice followed, sharp and official. Open up. The cowboy exhaled through his nose. Still early, he muttered. The maid frowned. Who is it? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her toward the main room, grabbing a shirt from a chair and pulling it on without fully looking at it. The knock came again. Open the door. Sheriff's office. The maid's expression changed. Sheriff? He nodded once. Deputy, probably. She followed him. You got law coming to your door at this hour? He didn't look back. I've had worse hours. The knock turned into a fist now, pounding rhythmically. Last warning. The cowboy opened the door. Cold air rushed in with the man standing outside. Deputy. Uniform not fully clean. Badge catching lantern light like a warning instead of authority. Behind him, two horses shifted in the rain. The deputy looked past the cowboy immediately. Saw the maid. Smirked. Well, he said. Didn't expect company. The maid didn't flinch. The cowboy stepped slightly in front of her. State your business. The deputy tilted his head. Business is you. A pause. Then he added, slower. And your overdue silence. The cowboy's jaw tightened. You ride all this way to talk nonsense? The deputy stepped inside without asking. Mud tracked onto the floor. He looked around like he owned the place. Sheriff wants a word. The cowboy shut the door behind him. That's not what you said. The deputy turned. No? You said business. The deputy smiled. That is business. His eyes flicked back to the maid again. You picking up strays now? The maid spoke before the cowboy could. I clean his house. The deputy laughed once. That's what they all say. The cowboy's voice cut in, low. Don't. The deputy raised his hands slightly. Relax. I'm not here for her. He stepped closer to the table. Then tapped it once with his glove. I'm here for you. The room went still. Outside, thunder rolled faintly again, but weaker now. The storm was moving off. The maid noticed the shift in the air before anything else. This wasn't weather tension anymore. This was people. The cowboy leaned against the counter. What does he want this time? The deputy's expression changed. Less amusement now. More structure. You remember your service? A beat. The cowboy didn't respond. The deputy continued anyway. Back when you wore a badge instead of hiding from one? The maid looked between them. You were law, she asked the cowboy. He didn't answer. That silence said enough. The deputy nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. He was. Then he stepped closer. And then he wasn't. The cowboy's voice dropped. Say what you came to say. The deputy reached into his coat. Pulled out folded paper. Old. Creased too many times. He placed it on the table. Debt, he said. The maid narrowed her eyes. Money? The deputy shook his head. Worse. The cowboy stared at the paper. Didn't touch it. The deputy continued. You left things unfinished. I left nothing, the cowboy said. The deputy leaned in slightly. You left a girl buried in silence. The room changed instantly. The maid felt it before she understood it. The cowboy's posture shifted. Not fear. Something heavier. Memory. The maid spoke carefully. What girl? The deputy looked at her now. You don't know? She didn't answer. The cowboy finally spoke. Don't bring her into this. The deputy smiled faintly. Too late. He tapped the paper again. She's already here. The maid stepped forward. Explain. The deputy turned the paper toward her. But didn't let her take it. Old case, he said. Old family. Old mistake. The cowboy's voice was sharp now. It wasn't a mistake. That made the deputy laugh. Oh, it always is. That's how men like you sleep. The maid stepped closer. Who is she? Silence. Then. The deputy said it. Your mother. The words hit the room like a dropped chain. The maid didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe for a moment. Then. That's not possible. The deputy tilted his head. You sure? The cowboy's voice came in fast. Stop talking. The deputy ignored him. She worked cleaning houses too, didn't she? The maid's eyes sharpened. Yes. And she disappeared. Her voice lowered. She left. The deputy shook his head slowly. No. He tapped the paper again. She was moved. The maid stepped forward again, faster now. By who? The deputy looked at the cowboy. Not her. The cowboy didn't answer. The silence cracked. The maid turned. By you? The cowboy finally spoke. I didn't know what they were doing. The deputy cut in immediately. That's not what the sheriff says. The maid's breathing changed. What does he say? The deputy's voice softened. That you knew. The room tilted. Not physically. Emotionally. Like gravity had changed rules. The maid stared at the cowboy. Waiting. He didn't deny it fast enough. That was the answer. The maid whispered. You knew something. The cowboy shook his head slightly. I knew parts. Parts, she snapped. The deputy stepped back toward the door. I delivered the message. He opened it halfway. Then paused. And I'd leave if I were you. The cowboy's voice sharpened. You already are. The deputy smirked. No. I'm warning you. He looked at both of them. Sheriff doesn't like loose ends. His eyes landed on the maid last. And neither do old families. Then he left. The door shut behind him. Silence returned. But it was different now. Heavier. The maid didn't move. Her voice came out slow. Tell me the truth. The cowboy didn't answer immediately. Outside, horses shifted again. Farther away now. But still present. Finally, he said. I tried to stop it. She stepped closer. That's not an answer. He looked at her now. And this time, he didn't look like shelter. He looked like consequence. I was too late. The cabin didn't feel like it was breathing anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath with them. After the deputy left, no one moved for a long time. The door stayed shut. The wind outside softened into a distant pressure against the walls, like something watching from far enough away to stay patient. The maid stood in the middle of the room, staring at the cowboy like he had shifted shape in front of her eyes. You were going to tell me, she said. He didn't answer right away. That delay said everything. Finally. I didn't know how. That's not the same thing. He nodded once. I know. She stepped closer. Say it. His jaw tightened. The silence stretched. Then. There was a case, he said. Years back. Not a case, she cut in. My mother. That landed harder than anything else in the room. He looked down for a second, then back up. Yes. The maid didn't blink. What did you do to her? I didn't hurt her. A beat. The maid's voice dropped. That wasn't my question. The cowboy exhaled slowly. I was part of the unit handling disappearances. Unofficial work. Sheriff's orders. Her eyes narrowed. Disappearing who? He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation again. Workers, he finally said. Girls. Women who knew too much. Or saw too much. The maid's fingers curled slowly. My mother wasn't a criminal. No, he said. She cleaned houses. I know. Then why is she part of your unit? The cowboy's voice got rougher. Because she was near the wrong people. The maid stepped forward. That's not an answer. He met her eyes now. It's the truth I've got left. A long silence. Then she turned away sharply, pacing once across the room like she needed distance just to keep standing. She stopped near the table. The papers the deputy had left were still there. Unfolded slightly. She stared at them. What did he mean by buried? She asked. The cowboy didn't move. Don't read that. She looked at him. You don't get to tell me what I do anymore. Her hand went to the paper. He stepped forward. Stop. She didn't. She pulled it closer. The writing was old, uneven, stamped with official marks that had faded but not disappeared. Names. Dates. A location listed only as a ranch boundary marker. And one line that made her stomach drop before her mind even understood it. Transfer order, unrecorded ward. Her voice came out thin. Ward? The cowboy closed his eyes briefly. She wasn't supposed to be listed. She was a person. Yes. So why is she a ward? He opened his eyes. Because that's how they erased her. The maid stepped back like the room had shifted under her feet. No. The cowboy nodded slowly. She didn't leave. Her voice cracked slightly, though she tried to hide it. She came back once, she whispered. I know, he said quietly. Her head snapped up. You know? He hesitated again. That hesitation was now unbearable. Yes. The room felt colder. The maid's voice sharpened. Where is she? The cowboy didn't answer. That was the answer. Her breathing changed. Faster. Angrier. No, she said. No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to stand there and say all this and still not tell me where she is. He looked at her, and for the first time there was something close to pain in his expression. I don't know if she's alive. That stopped everything. Even the air seemed to pause. The maid stared at him. Then whispered. You're lying. I'm not. She laughed once, but it wasn't humor. It broke halfway. She didn't just vanish. I didn't say she did. You're saying she might still be out there. Yes. Where? I don't know. Her hand slammed onto the table. The papers shook. Then why show me this? Because you deserve the truth. That's not truth. That's a wound. He nodded. I know. The maid stepped away again, shaking her head. This is why you brought me here, she said. Not for cleaning. Not for shelter. For this. He didn't deny it. That silence confirmed it. Her voice dropped dangerously calm. You used me. No. You used my life to fix yours. His voice sharpened slightly. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He looked toward the hallway. Toward the locked room. The maid followed his gaze. No, she said instantly. Don't even look at that. He turned back to her. That room is why they're coming. Her stomach tightened. What is in there? He spoke slowly now. Proof. Of what? Everything. The maid shook her head. You told me it was a mistake. I lied. That hit harder than anything else so far. She stepped forward again, voice low and dangerous. Open it. The cowboy didn't move. No. Her eyes burned now. Open it. He finally spoke. If I open it, there's no going back. There already isn't. A beat. Then. He walked down the hallway. The maid followed immediately. Fast steps behind him. Stop acting like you get to decide what I see, she said. He didn't respond. They reached the door. The locked door. It looked the same. But now it felt different. He stood in front of it, hand hovering near the handle. His breath was heavier now. The maid stepped beside him. If you don't open it, she said, I will. He glanced at her. You don't want to see it. I already saw enough to know I do. That silence again. Then he reached into his pocket. Pulled out a key. The maid stiffened slightly. You had it the whole time. Yes. Of course you did. He didn't defend it. Just inserted the key. The lock clicked. Once. Then again. The sound felt too loud in the narrow hall. The cowboy stopped. Just for a second. Then pushed the door open. The air that came out wasn't just cold. It felt stored. Like it had been trapped there for years. The maid stepped forward first. Inside. A small room. Too carefully kept. Too preserved. A child's bed pushed against the wall. Old fabric folded neatly. Drawings pinned unevenly across one side faded, curling at the edges. A cracked mirror leaning in the corner. And a single wooden box. The maid stopped breathing for a second. The cowboy stood behind her. Quiet. She whispered. This was her room. Yes. Her voice sharpened. You kept it. I didn't throw it away. That's not the same as keeping. Silence. She moved slowly inside. Each step heavier than the last. Her hand touched the edge of the bed. Then pulled back slightly, like it burned. What happened here? She asked. The cowboy's voice came quiet behind her. They brought her here first. Her head turned slightly. Who? The sheriff's men. She stared at him. And you let them. That hit him harder than anything she had said before. He didn't deny it fast. That delay again. I was ordered to secure the transport. Her voice dropped. Transport to where? He didn't answer immediately. Then. Downriver Holdings. The maid stepped back slowly. That's not a place. It is, he said. Just not on maps people like you see. She looked around the room again. The drawings on the wall. The careful order of things that shouldn't be ordered in a child's life. Her voice cracked slightly. She didn't die here. The cowboy shook his head. No. Then where? He looked at the wooden box. Then said quietly. We don't know who made it out. The maid stared at him. And for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel like confusion. It felt like something buried had just started to breathe again. The wooden box in the locked room stayed untouched. No one spoke for a long time after the door opened. The air inside the cabin felt different now, like something had been released and something else had replaced it. The maid stood near the child's bed, staring at the drawings without seeing them anymore. The cowboy stayed by the door, not stepping further in. You said you don't know who made it out, she finally said. He nodded. That's not good enough. I know. She turned toward him sharply. So we find out. He didn't answer right away. Outside, the wind had shifted. The storm had passed fully now, leaving the world washed in quiet, like nothing had happened. But inside the cabin, everything had. The maid stepped past him. Where do we start? He hesitated. Then. The well. Her eyes narrowed. What well? He looked uncomfortable saying it. Behind the old ranch line. Her stomach tightened slightly. You've been there. Yes. And? He didn't answer. That silence told her more than words. She grabbed her coat from the chair. I'm going. He stepped forward slightly. It's not safe. She turned fast. Nothing has been safe. That stopped him. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was true. He nodded once. Then we go now. They left the cabin without another word. The morning air was cold but clean. The ground still damp from rain. Every step through the dirt road felt louder than it should have. The maid walked slightly ahead. The cowboy followed a few paces behind. Neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't comfort anymore. It was distance. They crossed the edge of town where fences grew older and less maintained. Past the last working barn. Past the fields that no longer belonged to anyone except memory. The land changed slowly. Less cared for. More forgotten. Finally, the cowboy stopped. This way. They turned off the main path. The ground sloped downward, uneven, hidden by brush and broken stone. The maid stepped carefully. What is this place? She asked. He answered after a pause. Used to be storage. Storage for what? He didn't answer that. They continued down until the trees thickened. The air felt heavier here. Not physically. Emotionally. Like the land itself didn't want attention. Then she saw it. A circle of stone. Half-collapsed wooden cover. Old rope still hanging loose from rusted hooks. The well. She stopped. This is it? The cowboy nodded. The maid walked closer. Each step slower now. People still use it? No. Why not cover it? He looked at it. Because they wanted it remembered. She frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does if you know who they are. She stepped to the edge. The well was deep. Too deep to see bottom clearly. Just darkness. Stale air rising from it like breath from something sleeping. She looked down. What's inside? The cowboy didn't answer immediately. Then. Things they didn't want found. She crouched slightly, peering closer. The air coming up smelled old. Metal. Wood. And something worse she couldn't name. Her voice lowered. My mother was here. The cowboy didn't deny it. That was enough. She stood again. Did she fall? No. Then what? He hesitated. Some didn't fall, he said. Some were placed. Her jaw tightened. Placed? Yes. She turned to him. By who? He looked away. The families that own everything you walk on. Her voice sharpened. Say it. He finally said it. The ranch council. She laughed once, but it broke halfway. So this whole land is just a graveyard with fences? He didn't answer. She turned back to the well. Then suddenly kicked a loose stone into it. It fell. Echoed down. Far longer than it should have. She listened until silence returned. Then spoke. I want her out. The cowboy looked at her. That's not possible. Her head snapped toward him. Everything you've told me so far wasn't possible. He stepped closer. This is different. Why? Because it wasn't just one place. Her voice dropped. Explain. He looked into the well. They moved people between holdings. Rotated them. No records. No names that stayed consistent. Her face tightened. That's slavery. His silence answered. The wind moved through the trees above them, but it didn't feel like wind. It felt like something passing through memory. She turned away from the well. Where did they go after this? The cowboy's voice was quieter now. Some didn't go anywhere. That hit her differently than anything else so far. She stepped back. You're telling me she might still be alive somewhere under the system. I'm telling you I don't know. Her breathing grew heavier. Then we tear it open. The cowboy shook his head slightly. If you do that, they come for you. She turned on him fast. They already came for me my whole life. I just didn't know their name. That shut him up. She walked back toward the well. Knelt again. Looked down longer this time. Then spoke softly. If she's down there. Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. I need to know. The cowboy stepped closer. Knowing won't change what you find. She didn't look at him. It will change me. Silence. Then she stood. What do we need? He frowned. To open it? Yes. He looked at the rope. Then the broken structure. Then back at her. A reason. She gave a short, bitter laugh. I think I have one. He didn't argue. Instead, he grabbed the rope. The maid joined him. Together, they pulled. Wood creaked. Stone shifted slightly. The well responded like it had been waiting. Slowly. Reluctantly. Something inside moved back into awareness. And far below, a sound returned. Not echo. Not wind. Something answering them. The rope finally stopped moving. Not because it was done. Because something below it pulled back. The maid stepped away from the well first, breath sharp, eyes locked on the darkness below like it had just blinked at her. The cowboy let go slowly. His hand stayed in the air for a second longer than necessary. "You felt that?" she asked. He nodded once. "Yeah." Her voice tightened. "That wasn't water." "No." A long pause. The wind shifted across the trees, but it didn't feel natural anymore. It felt like pressure moving through old ground. Then, hoofbeats. The maid turned instantly. "So they found us." The cowboy didn't move yet. They were already close. 3 riders appeared at the top of the slope. Dark coats. Badges catching faint light. Sheriff's men. The maid stepped back slightly, instinctively placing herself between the well and them. The cowboy noticed. "Don't," he said quietly. She didn't listen. The riders stopped at the edge. The sheriff was not among them. But his authority was. The lead man dismounted first. Slow. Controlled. Like he owned silence. "You two done digging?" he called out. The cowboy didn't answer. The maid did. "No." The deputy smiled faintly. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. The maid stepped forward 1 step. "Funny. I was thinking the same about you." One of the riders shifted, hand near his holster. The cowboy finally spoke. "This is private land." The deputy laughed once. "Land?" He gestured around. "This isn't land. It's history." The maid's voice sharpened. "History you buried." The deputy looked at her now. Longer. Then nodded slightly. "Ah," he said. "So that's what this is." The cowboy stepped forward slightly. "Leave." The deputy shook his head. "You don't give orders anymore." "A beat." "Then." "You gave those up a long time ago." The maid's voice dropped. "Who are you protecting?" The deputy tilted his head. "Wrong question." He looked at the well. Then back at her. "Try again." She didn't hesitate. "Who's down there?" The wind shifted again. And this time, even the horses seemed uneasy. The deputy stepped closer to the edge of the slope. "You really want answers?" The maid didn't move. "Yes." The cowboy spoke quickly. "Don't answer him." The deputy ignored him. "Down there," he said, pointing, "is everything that keeps this place standing." The maid frowned. "That's not an answer." "It is," he replied. "Just not the kind you like." He nodded toward the cowboy. "He knows." The cowboy's jaw tightened. The maid turned slowly. "You told me it was mistakes," she said. He didn't respond. That it was orders. Still nothing. The deputy laughed quietly. "See," he said. "He still thinks silence makes him clean." The maid stepped closer to the cowboy. "Tell me," she said. His voice came low. "I told you what I could survive saying." "That's not enough anymore." The deputy cut in. "It never was." He reached into his coat. Pulled out a folded document. Worn. Stamped. The maid's stomach tightened again. He held it up. "This," he said, "is what you're standing on." The cowboy moved forward sharply. "Put that away." The deputy didn't. The maid stepped between them slightly. What is it? The deputy looked at her. Proof of transfer routes. She stared at it. Transfer routes for what? The silence that followed was not hesitation. It was calculation. Then. People, the deputy said. The maid didn't blink. The cowboy closed his eyes briefly. The maid whispered. My mother. The deputy nodded. Yes. Her voice cracked slightly, but only for a second. Alive? The deputy didn't answer immediately. Then. Sometimes. That word hit harder than anything else. Sometimes, she repeated. Yes. The cowboy stepped forward.